Ridgewood North. This is the third in our series of Learning in the Neighborhood, so I really appreciate you being here. We're going to talk about kids and technology. So yeah, I just wanted to welcome you. Thank you for being part of this conversation. We think it's really important, and we love your participation in it. I'd love to introduce you to our panelist, Daniel Rossi Keene. He's a friend and a long-time collaborator in community development work. He has a background in communications, and also he's a community leader, the executive director of Riverwise. And I'll let him take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I know you have many things you could be doing with your lives. You could even be home scrolling on TikTok, but you're here. Lots of things to watch these days about elections and storms and changing seasons and all sorts of stuff. So I really do consider it an honor that you make a conscious decision to be in the room with us this evening for a really important conversation that is very much about children and youth. But I want to also make it very clear that this is fundamentally a question about the human experience, right? Reflecting a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight and thinking about where we are as a human race in the arc of history. The last 20, 30 years are quite remarkable. And when the history books are written, if they're still making books at that point, and they look back at this period, it will be sort of like a hinge that a gate swings on. I was thinking about the fact that I have 4 kids, 21-year-old son, 17-year-old boy-girl twins, and a 9-year-old son. And thinking back over those last 21 years, my family emerged against the backdrop of the emergence of new technology. And that is a crazy, crazy experiment to be a part of. And there are days when that makes me feel really bad as a parent. And there are days when I step back with my wife and I say, dang man, like we're doing the best we can here because the entire human experience is in experiment mode right now. So, just a little reflection as we think about where we're headed tonight. Some heavy kinds of stuff. We're going to contend with questions about ethics, questions about parenting, questions about community and relationships, questions about leadership, being educators, mental health. All of these things are implicated by the technology that we increasingly inhabit, and I use that word actually very intentionally. So I hope that you will kind of come to the conversation with an expansive mindset, ready to think about our children and our youth, but also ready to look at yourself and to ask some questions about one another. And I'm just looking forward to seeing where the thing goes. I don't have a super detailed plan, and that I think will be to our advantage. I did take some time and wrote down a few classes of questions. So I thought in terms of sort of opening questions, let's see if I get this right, orienting questions, wrestling questions, and strategic questions or questions about resolve. So a few kinds of questions that we can talk through about just sort of like laying out the state of the field, talking about where we're coming from, kind of getting our bearings. And then we'll dig in and kind of, do sort of like what a frustrated philosophy professor, kind of a conversation that kind of person might lead. Just asking some questions and not necessarily getting to clear answers, but unpacking some issues. And then finally, I want to kind of like land a plane in a way that gives us some sense of hope and direction and purpose. And we'll see if we can do that in the time we have. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but we're going to get somewhere, okay? All right, I'm going to shut up. What I want to do next is get a brief introduction from folks who are assembled here today. So I have relatively limited knowledge of these folks. I'll be learning alongside of you in many cases. But if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are. And I think when I sent out an email, I asked you all to reflect a little bit on why you think Christine asked you to be a part of this panel. And so I think the idea here is tell us just a little bit about whatever level of interest or expertise or experience or failure you have that brings you to this particular conversation. Is that fair? Want to go down the line, or we want to have an emerging order here? Down? All right, man.
Of course.
You sat in the wrong spot.
Right. The chair was open. So thank you, everybody. Christine, thank you for the invite. Neighborhood North, I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of everybody about what it is that we're doing. My name's Fasa Ross. I'm a data ecologist, a digital economist. I'm focused on the convergence of what's going on with our physical and our digital economy. We've gone from this physical brick and mortar economy into this digital data-driven economy, and like he said, we don't have a plan. But we do know one thing for sure: data is an extremely valuable thing. My focus and what's brought me here today is data sovereignty. The community's data and what we produce through our interactions, through our culture, through our daily lives is extremely important. That data is being used to power billion-dollar industries and marketplaces that were not necessarily involved in the equitable exchange of the value that this data provides. And so with data sovereignty and the economy, which is the entity that I'm here representing as a member, we're focused on how kids who are going to inherit a future that we're creating for them can be better prepared with better educational programs, better capacity building programs, better training, new job opportunities that we know are going to be there in the future. So that's why I'm here, and really thinking about the future in that type of way and that kind of energy, and collaborating with Neighborhood North is something I'm really excited about.
Thanks, Boss.
Good evening, everyone. Christine, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you for the invitation to sit on this panel and to think about the question that you sent to us, why Christine invited me to have a chair on the panel. So, my name is Susan Smith, and I am a 14-year member of the Big Beaver Falls Area School Board. I work for BCRC, which is Beaver County Rehabilitation Center. I've been there for 15 years, and I am also contracted by Beaver County Behavioral Health as Beaver County's community outreach specialist. And so my job, I wear many hats in the community, so I think that's why Christine, she's shaking her head. So that is why I was invited. I am very invested in our youth, in not only Beaver Falls, but in Beaver County. I've had the opportunity over the years to work with students that have special needs. I've had the opportunity to work with our at-risk population, and now I am working very closely with, or very involved with the Beaver County Youth Ambassador Program, which is a mental health awareness and acceptance program that's in all of our schools in Beaver County. We started out 5 years ago with 5 schools and 80 students, and now we're up to 21 schools, or 21 schools and programs. So that includes our 14 public schools, all of our non-public schools, and our 3 alternative programs, alternative schools. And so we just had our first event for this year, and we had 413 students, which is pretty amazing. Thank you. And for us to be able to bring those students together, and you know, the thing about our ultimate goal is to enhance mental health awareness while decreasing stereotypes and stigmas associated with mental illness. And so we spend time teaching the students about mental illness, but we focus more on them being mentally well, teaching them how to develop a toolkit to balance and to manage their emotions. Tell them it's a lot like in the movie Inside Out, and they really relate to that. And I will tell you that our youth, you know, you were talking about the future.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what, from what I've seen, the interactions that I have with our youth here in Beaver County, we're going to be in good shape, okay? Because they understand. They want to understand their emotions. They want to be able to help others, you know, so that gives me great hope. And you know, because I'm going to be one of those seniors real soon. I'm on my way real quick, okay? So, but again, thank you and thank you.
Hi everyone. I am Tonette Whitted. I am the cameraman's sister, Seth. I am a practice owner, a private practice owner. I'm a therapist. I've been over 15 years. The name of my practice is Perspective Insights, which I think that is pretty much the mission of my practice. How can we take on other perspectives, see other things from a different way so that we can become more insightful about ourselves, about our behavior, why we show up the way we do, why do we function the way we do, how can we decrease dysfunction? And I think Christine asked me to be a part of this conversation, one, because I'm all over social media always commenting and talking about something related to mental health and how it affects us, but I think I'm all about collaboration, whether it's with families, whether it's with systems. How do we bridge gaps to have conversations? How do we break stigmas, like you said? And how do we allow youth to teach us while also flipping that and allowing elders to teach us and collaborate and create together? So I feel like I have a perspective to bring to the conversation today. And I've been getting a little bit more involved with technology since I went viral on TikTok recently. So I feel like that has a place here too. So I'm excited to be here and thank you for inviting me today.
Hello, I'm John Cleckley, the IT director at Beaver Falls School District. I've been working in the school for the past 20 years. Started from the bottom. I was a teacher's aide, then I was a tech, then I became IT coordinator, and now I'm director. This is my first year as director. It's been a long road with this IT. I mean, went from the floppy disk to man, you know, when I went to college, I didn't know what I was going to be. I didn't touch computers, but my guidance counselor recommended Penn State, and it was their first year with IT. And I didn't know I was going to be learning for the rest of my life. I mean, IT changes every 2 seconds. You know, I can't think of a better job being able to work around kids and being able to work with computers and technology. I have a very good background in technology, so, you know, I'm glad to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Doug Rowell. I'm the principal of Beaver Falls High School right down the street. Work with John. I think Christine asked me to be here obviously because I'm in the community. I've been an educator for 26 years, principal for 15, the last 5 here at Beaver Falls. My expert, or my level of comfortability with technology, John will probably tell you, isn't, I'm not an expert. But in my role, I have to work with ed tech and I have to work with students' needs and teachers' needs for technology. I've helped create a digital academy. I've written cell phone use policy and rewritten and re-revised and done a number of different things. And like John said, I started teaching in 1999 and very much using floppy disks and then, the little sticks, now up to cloud technology and all these things. Technology obviously has a very important place in education, and sometimes we worry that kids are using it for ill, and I think maybe that overshadows the potential that they can be using it for, but we have to balance sort of all these things. So I'm very much looking forward to learn. I've already learned something. I'd never heard of the term data ecologist. Just really interesting conversation before we even sat down. So I'm looking forward to learning some things tonight.
Thank you, Doug. I am Anthony Polizeski. I am the K-12 Network Coordinator at Carnegie Mellon University's Entertainment Technology Center. We're a master's program that teaches students from all over the world how to create games and other interactive entertainment experiences. I like to say that we're at the intersection of technology and drama, right? And as the K-12 Network Coordinator, it's my job to help our students stay connected to our K-12 educators, schools, nonprofit organizations, out-of-school time providers, museums, and other people who are interested in doing this same thing that we do, educational technology. I hope that I was invited because of that, but I'm also the youngest panelist. And I think I belong to the generation of young people that, the first generation of young people that educators were afraid of, right? These people had access to the internet. They know more about the internet than I do. What are they doing on the internet? Are they watching beheading videos? How can I stop my child from watching beheading videos? And now they're on TikTok, and the content's still kind of the same. And we're gonna break it down. I want to make a promise to those of you who are here.
this will be the last question. This will have been the last question where we start on one end and go down the line, okay? I don't know, it's something that, having been a part of many panels and led panels, generally, regardless of how awesome the panelists are, like sucks the life out of the conversation. So I aspire to have a more emergent, even like step over other people who are talking kind of conversation. The decorum doesn't have to be like a 10 out of 10 moving forward here, okay? So let's really just dig in and kind of have a family chat. All right, so just writing down a handful of things as y'all were talking. Questions about who owns the stuff that gets made when we're online? And like, where does it go to live, and does it ever go somewhere to die? Questions about mental health, about behavioral health, about the connections between the machines that we interact with and the machines that we're becoming, right? Those things are not distinct. Conversations around implications for family systems, and not just family systems, but social connectivity of all kinds. We learn through technology how to be as people, and how to be as systems, and how to be as citizens. That can go really well, or it can go really not so well. Heard a conversation about things like school policy, like how you organize norms in a given place. How you impose, can we impose norms? I think in some way we can. How you elevate certain sorts of practices that you want others to emulate, or that you expect to hold as standards around these kinds of questions. Relationship between education and technology, ed tech, curriculum. We are in a wholesale revolution when it comes to understanding what the point of education is right now. And technology is the heart of many of those deep, deep questions. So that was raised. And then I just wrote down a couple of emotions that I heard. Susan, I heard you reference hope. A hopeful future embedded in this conversation. I heard the emotion of sort of uncertainty. I think that's an emotion. I heard fear. And I'm sure there were others as well. But in all of those ways, each of the panelists bring perspective, insight, and certainly expertise. And so, and I know all of you in the room bring a different conversation. Some of you I know personally and well, and understand that you have very different subjectivity on all of this. And so we invite that all into the space, and appreciate you all being willing to introduce yourself. My next question, again, not down the line, okay? Although Foster, you can go first if you really want to. Think back for a minute. Well, before I ask the question, let's say this. We aren't going to really answer a really kind of elephant in the room kind of question. And that question is like, what counts as technology? It's actually a fascinating question, and we could unpack it for the next few hours together here tonight. If you had a bowl of cereal this morning, you probably used a piece of technology to get that cereal in your mouth, unless you're really weird. And so we're not going to unpack that, and I'm just going to kind of assume that we all know what we're talking about, but that's probably not a super sound assumption. I'm just kind of laying that out there for us, okay? So, with that caveat in mind, reflect back on your experience. What's the first significant, emotional moment or connection to, or like, if I ask you to think about like when you first sort of, like technology was something that you remember, one of your first memories around technology. Curious, like, where did that emerge in your life story? Maybe place that in a chronological. For some of us that was Pong. For some of that was something very different. So yeah, and maybe a few of us willing to tackle that question about early memories around technology. Pass this down this way.
Well, I'll start. Since Anthony was pointed out that he's the youngest person on the panel, I will own that I am the oldest person on the panel. And with that, my memories go way, way back. Oh, I see that, Doug, that's why I like you so much. Doug said the wisest. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that and respect you so much. So with that said, I remember I started at a company called Lender Service Incorporated in 1982, and there was this thing they were talking about, faxes were coming across. Like there was this fax and it was, wow. I said I was old, dude. I said it. I own it. But guess what? I was blown away with this paper transmitting. And remember the rolls were like black on one side, and it was just ugly paper, and then it became plain paper faxes, and then faxes became obsolete, and then there was these computers. We all had these desktop computers. Like, I know you all don't remember those things, and like you said, there were discs that went in them, and then there were flash drives. See, that shows how old I am, John. You know, and so yeah, a fax machine for me.
Almost doesn't feel like technology at this point, right?
No, because it's obsolete, right?
I would say I remember Oregon Trail. That's probably in school, but that was fun. But I think one of my memories I go back to is I was in high school and we had AIM messaging, and you could put up away messages. So now I didn't have to wait until a football game to hear about a party. Like, we all were connected, and I had the worst username, but we were connected more through the schools, and we would meet up and have a place to go. And then cell phones came, the flip phone, and then the BlackBerry, then the iPhone. I think that's when I was, this is something new, this is something exciting.
Can you explain what Oregon Trail is?
I'm probably gonna mess it up, but I remember we go across the country looking for cattle, and you had to collect things. You would die of certain diseases on the computer.
Oh, a game?
Oregon Trail.
That sounds awful.
I just remember Miss Tulsa and Oregon Trail in Central Elementary, and it was an adventure, and you could collect stuff, and there was a wagon, a van. I'm probably not describing it right, but it was pretty cool in second and third grade. You know, pretty bad picture, but yeah.
Mine is Access 995 and downloading music from Napster. Took you 20 days to get one song, and now it's completely different. You can just download, just get on there and find what you need real quick. It's just crazy how now everything's at your fingertips. You don't have to wait for it.
My mom was a business teacher, and she actually taught, like secretarial courses, typing and basic business. And I guess in the 80s, 90s, typing sort of got replaced with word processing and computers. So we always had a computer in my house, and so I kind of was aware of technology. I wanted like a PlayStation or a Nintendo, and I got like the Oregon Trail. Like I'm trying to play Madden and not chase cows or whatever you did in that game. But I graduated from high school in 1995, and I remember reading about the internet is something that's coming. And then when I was in college, like all of a sudden it was there, and just how crazy that was. To like not too many years later, when I started my teaching career, it was just like, it was emerging for students and for us as teachers, but it was something that became a tool just very quickly, and just it was like it was always there. And think about when like John mentioned downloading a song, like the time like there was an outage of the internet, or downloading an email or downloading anything. Today, like if a lightning strike hits or there's bad weather and the internet is out in our building and everyone loses their minds, it's on quicker from like a natural disaster than it took to download a song back then. It's just, that's where we've sort of evolved to, and it's just crazy to think about those things. So,
I have two, and I'll tell you first about, it's hard for me to say because technology was something that was a part of my life before my brain started recording, right? And only barely. For context, I'm 27, I'll be 28 this month, so I'm maybe a little bit older than I may have made out to be, but only just. I will say that the first time I have a technology memory was being asked to sit out of the first year of computer class at my private school. I was in the second grade, and the teacher knew that my family, my brother and I, had already had access to the internet. We're like sort of capable. Back in the day when you could know how to do everything with something, we were just about there. And so they asked us to just be productive in some other way during that time because they knew that there was nothing for them to teach us because the curriculum didn't exist. And then I'll tell you about my first experience with the social internet. I played a game called RuneScape. I don't know if anybody, yeah, one smile for RuneScape, thank you. I still play RuneScape now. My 18-year RuneScape anniversary is in November. I was 10 when I found RuneScape, and I found connections through a game that I could play on the computer for the first time. It's the same year that YouTube came into being. It's the same year that a lot of other people started using IM, things like, social messaging. Those are my two.
I feel guilty now that Foster hasn't got a chance to talk, so now I'm gonna come back and, at least we didn't go in a line, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember AOL Instant Messenger, that was definitely a thing. But it actually more recent for me, I would say Netflix. Like after you spend a week in the same clothes watching a series and you realize the power of technology to capture your attention, that's when it was pretty significant. I was like, wow, I'm glued to a TV and I'm ready for another series. Like if they would have kept going, I would have been there. And it's funny enough, it's connected to some of the work that we've done with UMI. We were a part of publishing a document. Actually, we co-authored a document that was published by the UN in 2022 about the attention economy and about just the things that are in our vicinity that capture our attention, and we're talking about the human technology, because that was one of the questions that stood out to me that you had said. Attention, the average person sees between 50 and 10,000 pieces of content every day. And that was in 2017 before generative AI came to be. So you're walking around and your brain, whether you want it to or not, is picking up the different colors, the different shapes, and everything that's in the room. And this is a $500 billion industry in 2025, according to, I think it was Nielsen, and that's the advertising industry, the media industry that we all know about. So definitely Netflix to me, who has your attention, who has your mind, has your time, right?
Who has your attention, who has your attention, has your mind, has your time. We could all get a tattoo that reminds us of that, right? Yeah, okay. Just to date myself a little bit, my neighbor got an Atari, and he was like the king of Clearfield. And I could not sleep, literally could not sleep, laying awake, wanting to get back to Sean Starr's house to play Pong. So that's, yeah. All right. I asked you those questions for a reason, because I want to pivot a little bit now and start to dig a little bit more directly into this question around children and youth. I've asked you all to kind of go back to a moment in time when you had this, at least on some level it was memorable, experience with technology. And what I want to think about together now is like, what's changing for youth? When you think about your experience with Oregon Trail, for me that was like I got taken out of class so I could go to this other room to play Oregon Trail for a half an hour a week, and that was like the highlight of my whole week, right? So let's think just a little bit together about like, what is the experience of being a youth? And again, I'm not going to really define exactly what we mean by youth. But how is that changing? How is that different than what that seminal memory for you evoked? Let's give some voice to that experience today as opposed to so many years ago.
Oh, I'm going to start. Yeah, just a little while ago. Yeah. Oh, just yesterday when I graduated high school. Yeah. Or I just between the 6th and 7th grade. Sure. I think that our youth today are handicapped by us in their agency around technology. We aren't doing enough to make sure that they, maybe my thought was ill-conceived. When I was growing up, my parents didn't know what I was doing on the computer, but they let me do things on the computer anyway. They taught me to be responsible, mentally agile, socio-emotionally strong, brave, and what came out of it was net positive. It was good. Today, young people are using technology as a tool because they're being taught how to use it. They're not using it creatively. They're only using it creatively within a certain boundary. They don't know how to install and uninstall programs. They aren't being given the agency to make any discoveries for themselves until they're in college. And that's only if they've pursued a computer science degree, because we want you to use Word. Now we want you to use Google Docs to write a paper. Now we'll even teach you how to change the size of the font in Google Docs, and so on. Those were discoveries that we had to make ourselves. And we knew before the teacher. And I think our curriculum needs to change to reflect that we want our students to be able to have that level of agency and to know these things intimately without us feeling that we need to be the masters of those things before we allow them to take that on.
Going back, talking about downloading those videos music for hours upon hours. It was kind of the same thing kids do now on their computer, but back then, the bad guy didn't have as easy access to us downloading those songs. Now anybody can get on a computer and put anything out there, and kids are susceptible to a lot more things than we were back then. Like obviously the time we spent didn't change much, because I could, like he said, we could watch Netflix all weekend. I could download songs 5 days in a row or whatever on the computer, but there just weren't, people out there, bad people, that are willing to take advantage of kids. So it's important for us to educate the kids about what's out there on the computers.
So I think a lot has changed and a lot has stayed the same, if that makes sense. I feel that life has evolved, humans have evolved, stimuli has evolved, creation, opportunity has changed. I also feel like natural development still, what I see in my field is still taking course the way it has. There's just different experiences. So kids and teenagers are still developing a sense of independence, and they're trying to figure that out. So they still engage in risky behaviors. We just have some more different technology now, but maybe in the 60s and the 70s, girls were riding in cars with boys. So it's different in what the stimuli is and the experience, but kids are evolving, teenagers are evolving and changing and interested and curious in certain things just because there's new things to look at. If that makes sense.
It makes tons of sense, and I love the line of conversation. Part of what I struggle with as a parent, and as a human, is figuring out what is it about this moment in the human story that is the same old, it's just a chapter of the same old book, right? And what are we experiencing in these pivotal 15, 20 years that is of a different order, or a different magnitude, or a different quality? And I would contend that there's a lot of stuff that's still the same. People are still people. We're still a human animal. We still respond to fear and pleasure and hunger and tiredness. Those things persist, and yet the way those buttons are being pushed is happening at a far more sophisticated, calculated, I don't want to answer the whole question, but there's some differences. There's some really critical differences. Can we unpack that a little bit? People yelled about electricity. People yelled about moving away from horse-drawn carriages. We ain't having that conversation in the same way right now, right? There's something different. Could we just stare at that and kind of reflect on what some of those differences are? Because I think it's sorry, I'm gonna let you talk right now. I think this is for me, this is the whole ball of wax.
At the beginning of what you were saying, what stood out to me was identity. And it related to, you sent us some questions via email, and there was one that said online and offline. What is the difference between them being online and offline, and identity changes? your identity, you know your identity physically, it's pretty easy. It's like, well, that guy that's over there is not me, because if he was, then he'd be standing here. You know, so it's easy. But when you start thinking about the technology side and the digital, your identity, the only time we really think about identity is like identity theft. Like somebody might have taken my identity. We don't actually have a relationship with what we're doing online. We just know that it's happening around us, and the youth spend 70% of their time online. 70% of their time is happening inside of a world that we haven't really built an infrastructure for them to quite understand yet. We know that a kid can go over there and play on that swing set, or we can see that, but when they're inside of something that's feeding them information, that's literally the same things that they're asking for. So they're in an echo chamber when you're online. So that's a different type of environment. Misinformation and disinformation is considered to be a top 10 threat going over the next decade. Misinformation, and this isn't just on the political, this isn't a political thing, this is the kids, this is the athletes is a big thing. Like that, there's kids right now that are training. We're sitting here and there's a 5-year-old that's in a basement right now training to become the next LeBron James or the next, hockey player. The next, like, sports is a really driven space where data is used a whole lot. And you'll see it in sports. Like sometimes sports inside of places like, in after school programs and stuff, those kids are leaving a sport to come to be to something here, and then they're headed to the next thing. But they're online the whole time. The whole time they're online interacting with information and stuff. So I thought about identity being a thing that has shifted a little bit because we played outside.
Thank you. That was a perfect segue for me, because that's what I worry about, the socialization skills in our youth. I think they're deteriorating. My granddaughter is 11 years old, and every moment, if she had her way, that phone would be in her hand 24/7. She does not want to put that phone down. And the interactions are limited because her face is in that phone. She does no conversation. I remember when my youngest daughter had girlfriends over, and they were all sitting in the living room, everybody was on their phone. Nobody was talking to each other. Or, only time was if, oh, did you see this? They show that, then they go back to scrolling. And that concerns me. Their ability to interact, their ability to effectively communicate. Those skills are not being developed. They're being inhibited. And I'm all for technology, and I think it's wonderful when it's used correctly, but when it's overused or misused. And when we talk about the youth of today, so much of it is misused because that's where bullying comes about. You were talking about identity. I think that identity is, I can be anybody behind that screen.
Right.
I have more courage than I would ever have face to face, and that concerns me, and so the issues of bullying, the fact that there's no downtime for these kids. When I was growing up, and those of you that are close to my age, we only had one phone in the house, okay? I can attest to it because I know the Mobleys only had one phone in that house, right? And your parents were not going to let you tie that phone up, right? Were they going to let you tie that phone up all day? You weren't going down to your grandma and girl's house and I said, no, not at all. No, not allowed. You had to ask. And so the thing about it is, if there was a problem that happened at school, it had time to die down, okay? But now it doesn't, because everybody has an opinion, and everybody can chime in, and then it can be instigated, and then it goes from something that was small to something huge. Those are the things that concern me about technology.
So I agree with everything that was just said. I do think we're at this crucial moment where we're on the precipice of something. But I don't know that kids are better off with technology today. I know that it has a ton of benefits, but to what the past two speakers just said, as a parent, I look at my kids and Sue, like you said, when my daughter wants to have a sleepover, most of the time I don't care if a bunch of kids are in my house because they don't make any noise because they're all just sitting like this. And it's very sad to me. And my son and his friends are a little different. They make a lot of noise, but I'm almost, as much as they're driving me nuts, I'm more happy when they're interacting with each other. And I think about, I'm Generation X, where parents didn't know where we were, and they really didn't care, I don't think. I mean, I tell my mom I'm going to ride my bike over to my friend's house, and I rode 2 towns away, and was doing who knows what, and my parents had no idea, swinging off a rope on a train bridge and, stuff that but now, like, we know where our kids are at all times, and what they're doing at all times. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's like, I was most happy this summer when my son and his buddies would just run around and go places, and I kind of didn't really know what they were doing all day. I told them to stay off these roads, and so I don't know. And I look at it in school, when you're talking about that constant connection, if a student loses his or her phone for using it inappropriately in school, I mean, the reaction is like someone has died, and you're losing it till the end of the day. And that worries me very much, that they can't, and that leads to all kinds of discipline problems because, they literally won't hand the phone over to an adult authority figure. They won't. And the parents a lot of times give us a hard time. Yeah. You don't pay that bill. Okay, but you're still in school. But they really have a hard time not having the phone in their hand. And when they have the phone in their hand, they're doing what Sue just said. They're going back and forth about something that's so trivial but causing so many problems. So I'm not trying to be negative here, but this is definitely what we see every day.
I can't resist, I have to. I am better off with a phone in my hand, but I'll tell you why. It's because I have a communications background. Somebody, instead of STEM class, which 15, 20 years ago, somebody decided was going to be the Band-Aid for everybody who couldn't learn anything else, or for people who were experiencing poverty, or all those other things, and making everyone an engineer in favor of teaching them how to be a human being in the ways that we were just talking about, being able to socialize with your friends. We are teaching them STEM class. Everybody here has a child who's in STEM class, or has been in STEM class. You have STEM class at the school. You probably also have engineering class. You have students, all of whom need to meet an SEL goal, a social emotional learning goal, and no communications class. I'm almost 100% sure of it, because if you told me that you did have communications class, it would be something that was completely unheard of. Though we're saying that students, young people are...
We do.
You do?
We do.
I am so proud. Can I give you like a hug? And I'm serious.
And every student takes communication at Beaver Falls.
It's amazing because every student is adrift because we're asking them to put the phones down, but they haven't ever been given been challenged to talk about who they are in a meaningful way. Or, how do I resolve a conflict between me and somebody else who's physically present with me? I bet you learned that in communications class. And how to have interpersonal conversations that mean something. It's easy because it's systematized on the computer or on our phones. All you do is put it into the little chat box. But for us to be meeting young people where they are and understanding that they just don't have those skills because by and large we haven't given them to them, that's something totally different.
Anthony,
May I ask a follow-up?
oh,
I don't mean
am I
to,
ever going to tell Seth he can't ask a question?
so he talked about infrastructure because the kids are in the phone and saying we haven't built an infrastructure around that. Are you saying that you're better in the phone because we're more advanced, you have access, all of these good things, and whatever's suffering, we just need to implement some teaching tools to fill in those areas? Like socialization, communication, whatever's missing?
You want me to record this? You can come up here.
No, sorry. I had to ask.
Appreciate it, Seth.
I think that a lot of times we think that we are doing young people a favor by trying to ourselves deeply understand whatever is coming next, especially in technology, especially because we're talking about technology, and that we would be doing them a much greater service if we taught them how to be human beings with strong enough mental and emotional fortitude to tackle those things on their own with an understanding that they won't become a master, and to remind ourselves that we also aren't masters of those things. Everything about technology is transient. It's coming, it's going. It's coming, it's going. And that's the only thing that's not going to change about it. In our lifetimes, in between today and tomorrow, Some of it will stay. I hesitate to call things fads because nothing truly is a fad, but for example, and I don't need to get into this too early, artificial intelligence. We are angry at young people because they are turning in assignments that they've used AI to create. We're angry at ourselves because we are missing AI photos and we're sending them to our children or our grandchildren or and then they reply back and say, didn't you notice that there were 4 fingers on this hand instead of 5? Or, how did you not know that this political ad that you saw was just made up by a computer? And we're mad because maybe we're missing some of that fortitude too, that, we have to be a little bit more understanding about the way things are going to change and to be pliable and to be able to move with the punches. Anyway, I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah, and I'll say that it's important to have communications classes, but these kids, people are not a monolith. There's so much dimension into the dimensionality and dynamics in the human experience. And so there's a lot of socioeconomic circumstances that we don't fully understand, and if we were to implement communications classes and really focus on what it is to be human, then we have to honor the cultural differences and stuff that exist from the different experiences that these kids are having. And in order to see that, we do need data. We do need technology in order to do that because, to your point, they're immersed in it already. And we need to remember that, hey, you're part of this human experience, but we need to think about the environment that they're in. They're in an environment where every word that you say is being recorded somewhere. Right now, all of our phones are converting our audio inputs into data. And if you go to your news feed, then you're probably going to see something that pops up that has something to do with data sovereignty of what we're talking about. We know what we're seeing. We know what's happening. But I do think that from an infrastructural standpoint, if we build, what's going on is innovation has outpaced humanity. We are building for economic purposes instead of honoring the social things that allow for communities to function properly. And I think it's really important that we start thinking about innovation and working with and therapists and people that are looking at, hey, there's all these problems that are going on, because they're going to give us the input that allow us to understand what it is that we're actually dealing with, because there is a consequence to these actions. To his point, there's a consequence that people are thinking different. They're interacting different. So yes, that's a great question. I hope that gave some insight on my side.
Super insightful, and this is fascinating stuff. So, technology is outpacing our humanity. Technology is outpacing our humanity. If you're young enough, you might not quite feel that. If you're a little older, you probably start to feel that. If you're even older than that, you are living that in your bones. Something dramatic has shifted, and it's that our humanity hasn't caught up with our technology. One of the questions we have to stare at as a human race, as educators, as museum builders, as community advocates, is what kind of a humanity do we want to create? What are the tools and resources we need to do that? And then how do you generate norms and expectations around that kind of future? It's not surprising to me that many of us, if not most of us, feel lost in that sea of uncertainty right now. But I think, it's an exciting time in some respects. It's a terrifying time in some respects. Those of us who are able to stare at that question in whatever context we find ourselves in and begin slowly to architect meaningful solutions to some of these fundamentally human problems, we're going to create better communities for ourselves and for others. I say that, and I also feel the weight of having to stand up against generative AI and fight the relentless, methodical, technologically, economically motivated machine that is pouring and washing over us at every instant. And so I think this is where it behooves us to start thinking again about our own voice, our own agency. We need better policymakers. We need better legislators. We need better communicators about the nature of communities that we want to create together. And I think that's why a space like the museum, or the Portobello, the Baby Bello, or the cultural or the educational trust, like these are places that in our communities can call and scream for something better, something more human. And if we can marshal that charge, I don't know what else to charge. I don't know what other charge to marshal. It feels paltry in comparison some days, but I think that's our calling. Now I'm sermonizing, not leading a conversation, so I'm going to stop. Let me look at my clock here for a second. Okay. One other thing I wanted to say, and this won't be a sermon, I promise. I see some kind of hope in my own children about some of, Anthony, what you were describing. And I love it that you're here, and I see you in some ways as sort of like a virtuous warrior for the sort of, it's not all as bad as you think kind of the line, and I think it's good to have that conversation partner in the room.
Some of it is as bad as we think, and worse.
Fair enough.
We'll talk about it later.
My 17-year-old son is leading me in, he would laugh if he heard me say this, but he's leading me to a better kind of humanity by the way he relates to particularly his phone and social media. Like he's calling me out on the regular, Dad, get off TikTok, Dad, the short form content's killing your brain, Dad. And like he shames me into a different kind of shame, and hopefully a different kind of practice. We're getting there. But like I see some of his friends, like they're intentionally stepping away from some of these media because they see and realize that something is not good and healthy about it. So maybe we develop better tools and resources, and it's sort of like if you take an evolutionary and historical perspective, maybe we're in that weird transition where like our tail hasn't grown quite long enough to help us yet, and it's just sort of in the way. And we got to figure out how to turn that into an asset. I don't know. There's a lot of open questions in there, I'm sure. Let's get back to the conversation more specifically with youth in your specific contexts. And I feel like we've been kind of throwing a lot of shade on technology, and that's probably well deserved. Let's talk for a second about where you see like youth coming alive, where you see them thriving. Where are new opportunities and new horizons being opened up because of technology presence in your context? John, you're itching. You want to talk? I guess you don't.
Well, I was, thinking back, before the pandemic, we weren't really using much technology, but now every student now has a Chromebook, and we're using technology in pretty much every class, where they're sharing documents. Nothing much is being printed out anymore. It's just, there's so much more they can get to and see and understand, like a lot of us are probably used to using paperback books, and that worked for us, but now the world's changed. They want everything at their fingertips, which is a lot better. You can get more information. If it takes you 20 days to read a book and find out what you need to know, now you can find out what you need to know on the internet quickly, which makes you, you can be educated a lot faster.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know I shared some negative viewpoints here, but before I started at Beaver Falls, literally the day that the pandemic, that schools were supposed to reopen, and I had been pushing one-to-one in another school district for a long time. And I was very much, and I still am an advocate of technology, but I was desperately trying to get my former school district to go one-to-one. And when I came to Beaver Falls, during the pandemic, you had, the need was so there just from an equity standpoint. You had kids who were trying to learn on their cell phones, wherever they could find a hotspot, and there wasn't a whole lot of things that were open. And our district made a decision very quickly, and it was the right decision to go one-to-one. not knowing, what the extent of COVID was going to be. And it definitely, like John said, our kids are one-to-one. And now we're at the point where we're having some conversations, and maybe we do need to reel it back in just a little bit, because, are they using it to its full capability and its full potential? But it was definitely, very important for us to get devices in the hand of kids, to upgrade our network, to get better places for them to use those devices, in the community. But now that conversation is taking a little bit of a different turn. We were actually just talking before we started about what we're going to do moving ahead. But they have the capabilities. It's in their hands, and I do think that's a powerful thing. I do think that's an important thing. So.
I see with a lot of, well, I can't say people I see, but in general, creativity. I feel like teenagers and young adults were the reason I went into private practice. I was like, oh, I don't have to work for someone for the rest of my life. So I feel like that was something I gained from them. And I think I see them being creative and still trying to find meaning. Who are they? But then I do see that turn into a darker space. And I was saying this earlier, sometimes they go looking for diagnosis to find meaning or to find identity. Do I fit this description that's in the DSM? Because, and I'm speaking specifically social media sites, because a TikTok expert who is not a therapist or in the mental health field says they feel they fit a description of this or that. So I feel like I see the good and I see the positive, and maybe my goal as a therapist, where's the balance? Where's the middle ground of, it's really great to find meaning and to make connection, because we learn vicariously through other people's experiences, but also having a therapist have to debunk and constantly say, hey, that's not what's going on here. You're just having a bad day. Let's learn healthier coping mechanisms and things like that. I think that's what a lot of therapists are seeing in their office, having to dismantle some of the stuff that happens. And I love social media, so I'm an advocate both ways. But I do see, I think, both sides of the harm, and then also of the good, the creativity, the opportunity, all of that. But I think there's a need for balance and education and all the stuff we're saying now, communication of what do we do with some of this information that might not be beneficial, or how do you guard that, safeguard our kids and our teenagers, or allowing media to teach them what to be.
Anthony, you can have the last word on this one, then we're gonna.
Okay, I'll try and keep it brief in that case. I know I just said that I was a big advocate for technology. I'm coming to you from a place where I'm looking at tech every day that I am not allowed to talk about. I sign paper that says I can't. I am on the very bleeding edge, and I see two things. So I see students from all over the world who are the haves, who have severe technology burnout, and it's because the algorithm is too strong, right? We have scientists are working on ways to get into our brains that are so effective that we can't put it down, and then when you don't feel good anymore, right? And then in my work as the K-12 network coordinator, we work almost exclusively with underserved and underrepresented communities. So I get to put that same technology into the hands of people who have never worn a VR headset, or don't even have a computer at home, or definitely don't have a computer at school, right? And maybe they have a phone in their pocket because their parent is really, really, really concerned about where they are and what they're doing at all times. But I see those two things, and neither of them are really good or helping anyone in my experience, especially lately. And it doesn't matter if we have augmented reality where you can look through your tablet and see something that isn't there next to you, whether it's a Pikachu that actually knows where it is, or a piece of art that's important and it's from Versailles, France, right? That doesn't matter when you can't, when you're so tired of it. Yeah, I will take your question.
Sorry, I don't even know if we're allowed to do questions.
You do whatever you want.
Pending your NDA, so don't answer what you can't.
Yeah, I will.
Are you developing a software then to not let that worm into their brain, or like what are you saying here?
No, so actually, we were talking about something earlier that somebody said, how can we change the way we're making decisions to improve this thing? We've actually made a lot of decisions that now we can't walk back. This thing that we're talking about is one of them. We've already presented the most scientifically effective way to get into somebody's brain and stay there that we've ever created. It is too big for us. It is way too big. And if you don't think that it is, open Blender, open any software that exists, and then try to learn everything about it. It used to be that you could fit everything about technology into books. God, no way. You absolutely couldn't do that today. You couldn't even fit a fraction of it into a book. Do you remember a time where you could open up a book, read the whole thing, and then know everything that there was to do? No. Not at the beginning in the late 90s and early 2000s, maybe, where you could open up something for dummies and know everything that was worthwhile knowing about, like, say, Windows XP. Yeah. No, maybe not 10 minutes, but not anymore could you possibly do that thing. So I'm sorry to say, no. Yeah.
So there are undoubtedly limits on, of course, what any single human actor can bring to this, so far as an antidote is concerned, right? And there are, I mean, the attention for the human mind is quite a commodity, right? I mean, you want to, I read a book recently called Surveillance Capitalism. I think that's what the title was. It was probably longer than that, but that had that phrase in it. And it's like, we live in a world that has monetized our attention. That's the currency of humanity, of the globe at this point. And so I don't want to be flippant about what we can and can't control, because many of these fights are happening way, 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 way above our weight class, right? And the sad and real reality is that our children are the casualties of some of those fights that are way, way, way above our weight class. I don't know what to do about that here tonight. It's probably not a super hopeful message for a museum, particularly it deals with children. Christine, I'm sorry.
I find that statement is very powerful, but actually we're all adults. So we all have a choice in what we're giving our children. And I think that's where I struggle with this so much, because it's like everyone's just like given up. And it's like, but at the end of the day, like, you're the one buying the iPad, you're the one buying the iPhone, which, by the way, 20 years ago, to buy a 10-year-old $1,000 anything would have been absolutely insane. And I'm Oregon Trail, Instant Messenger, that's my era. And so I think that's where I feel frustrated, because everyone's like, we don't know what to do. Don't buy it.
Yeah.
Just be the adult and like say no for as long as you can, or find phases of ways that you can, slowly do it. Find 5 friends, parent friends, who aren't going to do it, so that you know that you're not the only one. I mean, that's where I just get so frustrated, because it's like, we're just like, we don't know what to do. And I feel like it's a major cop-out.
It's fair.
Sorry.
No.
You know what I mean? Because I hear you, but it's like, well.
What is your name?
Kristen.
Kristen, thank you. Don't be sorry. It's a great reality check. There are things that we have agency over. We always have agency over something, right? Balancing that with what we don't have agency over is the magic. And there are things that a parent can do. There are things that a children's museum that can do. There are things that an educator can do. Foss is going to respond to you in just a second, but like, this is sort of like a nice pivot for my next question, where I want to stare at some of these issues. So I'm going to pass the mic off, and then we'll come back to stare at this a little bit more.
Somebody had mentioned COVID, and we were already doing this digital transformation thing, and then when the pandemic happened, our reliance on technology increased significantly, as almost like a catalyst, because we relied on virtual learning, we had to social distancing and these different things, and you saw for the first time things that had never happened before, where commerce had reached a level where it's like there's more online commerce than offline commerce, and the usage of these applications. Now it's fallen off since then, but all it takes is a nudge for a society on a macroeconomic scale. All it takes is a nudge, and now you've got kids that pick up things, and this is a part of their life now. I went to a graduation at Syracuse, and they were like, this is the first class that has graduated since the pandemic together. And I mean this all to say is that the infrastructure around us that we're using. Like, try buying something at a grocery store, and if you can't go through the one line because they don't have any cashiers, then you have to use technology. Like, it's being built on top of people. And that's the thing, is if you don't let your kids have it, then they're not prepared to even...
I'm not saying, I'm not anti,
Oh, no,
but I
I
don't think that, like, I think it's happening so young.
Yeah.
And these kids are missing out on these, like, social experiences. Like, they're not learning how to interact or make up after a fight because they're not in the lunchroom literally looking at each other. They're constantly distracted. You know, instead of just reading a book for school, now it's on their... And I'm not in Beaver Falls, I'm a different district, so we're also one-to-one, but it's like, instead of just being able to take that book and go to a separate room and really remove themselves to concentrate on it, they have to read it on a device where they're able to do 10 other things at once. And I think every person in this room can say, like, that's hard for us, and we're all over the age of 30. Well, not you, but you know what I mean? So I'm just saying, sorry.
No,
I'm not
that's a great
anti-tech, I
point.
get it, but like, the 5-year-olds just know how to check out at the grocery store because that's just how it works. They know what to do.
They could learn it by osmosis,
we are not a
absolutely.
big screen house at all, but my kids still totally know what to do.
Right.
So,
Right, and what's crazy is these QR codes. I was talking to Christine about this, like the QR codes, they're spamming QR codes now where if they're on posters, they're on everything, all the children's books have QR codes. They could be scanning something and their information, there's just so many different things that they're exposed to. I'm actually on your side. I think we need to be exploring this at a deeper level.
I just attended a training today at the Beaver Valley Intermediate Unit, and it was on trafficking, help me, sex trafficking. And he talked about the internet and our kids having such exposure to the internet. And like you said, a 5-year-old on a phone that costs over $1,000 is crazy, because no, we wouldn't have done that a long time ago. But these kids can access everything, but what's more important, or what's more dangerous, is people can have access to them, you know? And he said that he got into a heated argument with a parent because he said no parent should let their child take their device to bed with them. At night, those phones should be taken by the parents because you know 9 times out of 10, they're going to be on that device. And it's totally unsupervised at that point. And people have too much access to our children, and that really, really concerns me. Sitting in that training today and him giving all these examples of people, predators out there, you know, just waiting and preying on our children. That's a big concern to me.
I hate to do this because there's just so much more we could be talking about. I'm going to shift gears one last time, and then we'll maybe use 10 minutes or so to have some more conversation, because I know, many of you have questions. I brought this. So, in case you're in the back and you can't see, this is
This is your brain on drugs.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know how you pronounce this. Utz braided twist honey wheat pretzels, 56 ounces.
It's very analog, Daniel.
Yes.
It's too analog for me.
It's very I can digitize it and email you or text you a picture. So this was in my office a few weeks ago, and it had a bunch of salt in the bottom of it. And my 9-year-old came to my office because his mother had to go somewhere, and he was stuck with me for a while. And he walked in, and the first thing he said is, "Can I play NBA 2K on your phone?" I said, "No, just like figure out something to do." And he yelled and whined and, whatever. And then he went and talked to one of my colleagues and interrupted them for a little bit. And he came back and he found this thing. And before long, he was in the bathroom and he had emptied out the salt and dumped it in the, in the sink and wiped it and cleaned it out and set this up about that far away and found this stress ball on my desk and made up a game for himself, right? And he was...
Here we go. Good stuff.
Thanks, Bob. I guess there's a Frisbee here too, right, Jamie? And it was like a slap in the mouth for me as a parent, right? Like, I felt so dirty and so proud and so dirty. Because that became a generative AI for him, right? Like, I don't know, that's probably not a good way to say it, but like, he generated something, right? He made a game for himself. He entertained himself, he innovated. Now that's not, that's probably not a stage 25 creative work of humanity on the one hand, but on the other hand, he exercised skills and dispositions that are far more consistent with the trajectory you're describing than the trajectory that is foisted upon us from on high. That's one data point. I've been going nuts lately. July 11th, for almost all of these, is your birthday? You looked like that was really an exciting day for you.
I'm just excited to hear what you're going to say about July 11th.
I have been for 9 months, I was calling July 11th Independence Day, because I had like this just relentless gauntlet of obligation and a lot of publication stuff that I had to push out and a lot of grant, just like, it doesn't matter. It was just a whole bunch of stuff. It was all beautiful and good and righteous and noble and like, it was good stuff. It just was relentless, and the 11th, it all kind of came due. And a month or so before that, I bought a bass boat. And my dad actually bought 60% of it and gave that 60% to me. Anyhow, we had an economic transaction that worked out in my favor. I've been spending Seth knows this, way too many hours on the water. And I've been taking my 9-year-old and I've been taking my nephew and something is happening there that is righteous, right? And I think it's way more consistent with what a museum wants to become than maybe what happened on NBA 2K. So in our closing moments as a conversation, rather than continue to hear about my boring life, help the room be encouraged about practices and dispositions that we can pour into our youth and frankly pour into ourselves. Like, where have you seen hope in this? Where have you developed personal strategies with your students or with your kids or with your spouse where you've been able to fight the good fight and come out on the other side in a way that has a healthy interaction with technology? Let's kind of land the plane there for a minute. Any thoughts?
Well, I agree with you as a parent. I think educating parents on technology use and limiting your kids on their amount of time to using technology, ultimately, as adults, we have control over what kids do. Sometimes they may act like we don't, but we have control. So, for me, the silver lining is that for the most part, kids will do what adults do. So if we practice those things like not being on our own phone all the time, then they're going to pick up on it. I mean, we see it at the school all the time. Obviously, we're like mentors to kids, but they see what we do. I'm an IT director, but there's like 100 kids that say hi to me when I'm walking through the hallway. Though I'm not a teacher, but they still respect me. They see, so monkey see, monkey do. They see me I don't play on my phone. They don't do it.
We are very specifically, this was the question for me. The physical, again, and the digital, we got to remember that data is what's driving a lot of this stuff that we're doing. I don't think technology is necessarily going anywhere, but we need to hold on to and keep these human values things going. And we need to keep that part going as well. And there has to be a middle. So what we've been doing is creating this kind of like phygital sandbox, this place where if we think the economy is going to be here in 10 years, what would we like it to be like, in inviting the community and people that have great ideas and people that are working, the nonprofits, the for-profits, the institutions, the philanthropic entities, and even government, that they know that technology is going to be here too, but they would like to see it be a healthy thing, and we need to create the best practices that actually involve technology not being harmful to us. We need to have principle, we need to figure out what the ethics are, and I think so somebody had said this, her name is Patricia Clower, and she teaches attention literacy, and she said, we've reached this space in time where human attention has decreased so much that we've lost the ability to solve complex problems. I was like, that's a dangerous place to be. Because this is a complex problem. And it's not going to be resolved immediately. So I just want to take this time to invite everybody to be a part of this Intro to Data Sovereignty workshop series that we're launching on November 6th, 13th, and the 20th, which is going to be teaching what we can be doing collectively and collaboratively as a community. We're in alignment with Neighborhood North because it's really the kids, us, and the seniors, like all of us need to be working to make that happen. And technically, I don't think that we know everything that we're supposed to do, and that's okay. To your point, this hopelessness thing, that's not going to solve the problem. I agree with you. We need to come together. So that's my thoughts.
You know, I think, Dan, when your 9-year-old son, took that pretzel container and made a toy out of that, I was proud of him because I thought that showed problem-solving skills. He had a problem. Dad wasn't going to let him play on his phone, so he had to go to plan B. And guess what? That's what life is all about, this thing called life, trying to figure it out. And he did. And the fact that he was happy playing with that too, wasn't he? He was occupied, right? And he didn't go, he let you do your work and he didn't bother your coworkers. I think that was a win-win-win, right? So very proud of him for that. I also think, you brought up a really good point. You know, sometimes as parents, we can have peer pressure as well, you know? Because when everybody else's your kids come home and say, well, everybody else has a phone or everybody else has this. And you know, like you said, you'd like to get 5 parents just to have a little support group to say, okay, put the stake in the ground. We're not going to do this, or we're going to try to have balance, as you said. You know, it's really hard. Balance is hard in everything, in every aspect of life. Balance is hard. So I just think that I would like I do believe in technology. I think it's a wonderful thing. My husband died 18 years ago, and when I was driving to work today, I thought of that. I said, I think of all the things he's missed in 18 years. You know what I mean? You all think back to 2006. All the things that he has missed. There's a lot has changed in over 18 years. And so so much is going to continue to change, and it's good. From a school board perspective, you know, when we buy the e-books, we save money that way. That's when you all come and do a presentation for us for curriculum. That's the main thing. That's the first thing you're saying to us. Well, not the first thing. They first tell us about the book and how this is going to benefit our children, and they do a great job with that. But then it's followed up with, this is going to be a cost saver for us. And for a district that, you know, is not a wealthy district, that benefits us. So yes, I'm pro technology, but boundaries. We need boundaries.
And I echo balance again. And continuing to go back to, I think someone said human relationship, and just trying to find that balance of how can we collaborate together, because technology isn't going anywhere. I think some of us wish that it could exist, that hey, we would never have to deal with this, but it's here, and if we're not involved in that aspect with our kids, somebody else will teach them. You know, somebody else will introduce something to them. So I think finding the balance of, okay, you teach me something, let me teach you something that I've known that has nothing to do with technology. I always think back about my mom and my brother. There was a way for him to go, and I think it stifled him because he wasn't fully allowed to be creative in a time when it was like technology is being introduced and he's really into this, but you're gonna go this way. And now that she's no longer here, he's went the creative route that was stifled. And so I think there is room for multiple things to be true, that it can be harmful and dangerous, and I need to protect you and put boundaries in place as a parent, but there's also room to let me learn with you. Let me also protect you while you're learning. Me also be a part of your creative process so that you can be who you're called to be and that you can feel your authentic self. But I'm still going to tell you yes or no at the same time. So I think I go back to collaboration. How can that make sense in your family structure, in the world that your child is growing up to be in, and learning from each other and valuing the relationship that comes from that.
I'll try to be brief again because I can feel it getting to the end time. Not the end times, the end times. We are in a room full of complex, compassionate, resilient, understanding people, right? All of us, nobody excluded. Which is a good thing. It means if we are those people that I'm telling you that you are, and I am, and it means that our children can be those same people from watching us, from experiencing things with us and without us. If you are interested in using technology, use it to augment those things about yourself. Teach your children how to augment those things about themselves, how to use technology for its intended use as you see it, which I hope is being more compassionate, understanding others more complexly, being more considerate, practicing worthwhile social interactions on the internet, as every child will have them in the future. There is room for it there, and it's up to us to deliver that.
All right. Y'all have been quiet and patient. Maybe take 10 minutes or so. If you have questions that are sort of burning in your soul, things you'd like to talk about, things that haven't been said. Maybe you disagree with something, maybe you want to set the record straight. We're here for all of it. So, thoughts or comments? Renee, are you?
Yeah, I'm a parent of a 13-year-old actually who wandered in, ate some cookies and wandered out. Goes to Beaver Falls actually. So I am really struggling with what it displaces in his life. So I'm worried about it displacing boredom. I'm worried about it displacing social interaction, which we did talk a little bit about. I'm worried about it displacing problem solving, that he can just get the answer and it's done. Part of me as a parent wishes to say to schools, I would love to free you guys up to not be so beholden to technology, to give our kids life experiences, social interaction, problem solving. But I wonder if some of what you're saying, this woman up here, is that there's this dance we're doing, the parents are demanding, you gotta be cutting edge, and the schools are like, okay, we'll be cutting edge. And I'm not sure that we're stepping back and actually asking, do we really want this? Is this good for kids? Is this good for adults? It's different for adults because they can reason, they have a higher level of understanding and reasoning. Kids don't have that. They're more vulnerable. And I do wonder if there could be a bigger conversation about whether technology in the schools is even really a good thing.
You want to follow up?
I would like to follow up.
Yes.
Could we implement some safety protocols like we would a fire safety drill, like a social media safety drill, or something to that effect where they would present this information so they know, not as much as we know, but they need to know enough to be safe as well, not just being from a parent overbearing standpoint. Do you know what I mean? My kids are little, by the way, so this is going to be a long thing for me.
I would ask that too, and I feel like because you're the district here, you're like getting called out, but it's not. That's not the intent. But the fact that you're here says a lot, though.
We got kids too, though. So.
What? Yeah, I think too. It's like you said this thing of parents want cutting edge. But I think so much of the one-to-one rush happened because of COVID, and at that moment it was absolutely necessary for equity issues, and so that children were able to learn not on a cell phone, like getting Wi-Fi from a fast food restaurant. I understand that completely. But I think my question, like with our district too, is like, we go to Quaker Valley. Like, did the parents ask for this? Like, was there like a big rush of people at school board meetings being like, everybody needs an iPad or a Chromebook, and we only want ebooks, and we don't want textbooks anymore? Like, in my conversations with families in our community, like, no one asked for that. It just kind of happened. And I'm not saying that technology in the school is not important, But when my 4th grader writes her first creative writing assignment, her first personal narrative on her iPad instead of by hand with predictive text and predictive spelling, that was her first writing experience. That frustrates me as a parent. So to go answer them, but I'm saying, like, did parents really ask for it?
So, as we said, the pandemic kind of forced us into that.
Right.
And we're at the end of that line, making that decision whether to stay one-to-one or explore other options. As far as our younger kids, technology is a second-hand thing. We don't even use it that much in our earlier grades because specifically for what you said, that they need to be able to read and interact more so without technology. So.
I mean, I would say that,
Because theirs was a bigger, broader one.
I would say that everything you just said, yes to all what you just said. There was a push for ed tech prior to COVID. It was more the districts, the districts that had, like Quaker Valley, that were embracing it, and the districts that didn't, like us, we didn't have access to it. And it wasn't until we saw how much we desperately needed that this sort of the field was leveled. Do parents want cutting edge stuff? Yeah, but you'd also be amazed at how many parents, whenever we talk to them about their kids got in trouble for something, when they say, why don't you just ban phones? And then it comes back to, well, why don't you ban phones? Like, you're the one who sent them into our building, like, you know.
Well, that's what I'm kind of saying, and please don't hear it as me saying, why don't you guys? I'm saying, are we putting pressure on you guys? Like, I know the middle school principal is like, please take your kids off of TikTok, please take, like, it doesn't sound like that's a helpful thing for the schools, and are we as parents kind of pushing it, I guess?
Well, the thing is, the genie's out of this bottle, and it's not, we've talked about it, it's not going back. Regardless of what we're, what we, think about different things. And I do think we have a responsibility as educators to sort of teach our kids how to do this, but the problem is like I wrote I didn't write it, but I assisted a teacher write a course at my previous school called Digital Citizenship, where our goal was to teach students how to appropriately use technology and to understand the dangers of all the things we've talked about tonight. And I brought that over here to Beaver Falls, and I had one of my teachers here essentially do the same thing. We started off as a requirement, but then we moved it to an elective just because we needed to have so many other academic requirements. But here's the thing about it. All the things that we talk about in that class that we've taught about, I've dealt with in my office, and I've said to students, hey, don't you remember in Digital Citizenship where they said pictures don't go away, or you have to ask for permission, or there's these legal consequences, and the kids will go, yeah. And I'm like, but yeah, you still took this picture, shared it with 1 million people. So I don't, now maybe that's not enough. Maybe one class, obviously that's not enough. But I do think we have a responsibility to work with them and teach them, because it's not going away, but how do we, harness it and give them some level of responsibility? And I don't have we're flying the plane as we're building it, I would say.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that they don't understand value in this new world that we're moving into. And like you said, I have these conversations with my family. I'm like, could you please stop taking pictures of our of my yearbooks and of family photo albums and putting this stuff online, because Facebook takes 4 billion fake accounts down every year. And there's all these bad actors, and it's just they're taking your data, that's it. And I think there's something about teaching us how to, especially these kids, like teaching them how to be, they have an opportunity to be producers instead of just consumers in the digital world. Like, you're producing the data that's following you around. Like, if they had a better understanding of its value, then maybe they could become better stewards of it. If they had a better understanding of its value, then they would know when to be cautious and when to listen to mom. Mom was right. Mom was right. But it's like they second guess us. I think they second guess the generation before them because we're not glued to our phones. We forget our phones sometimes and play. They don't forget their phones. There's one thing they don't do is forget their phones. So it's just really just that nudge between consumer and producer and having more knowledge and then allowing them to, like you did with your son, he evolved.
Yes.
He evolved.
Yeah, sure.
We might not see a way through, but if we put them in a position, then they'll be throwing data, and like who knows what they'll be doing, but they'll figure it out. You know, so that's my thoughts.
And that's what you want. Figure it out.
Are you ready for me?
You're poised, go for it.
All right, excellent. So it's kind of two questions, right? Is there such a thing as a social media drill? No. Your child will never know ethics without the internet. It's too late. But that doesn't mean we can't teach them ethics or how to be socially responsible. Should it be integrated into a curriculum? Should it be part of learning? Yeah. I can't make that change, but a lot of people who are like you in mind will. And it's, I'm almost 100% sure of it, because without it, we're nowhere. Is the pressure coming from educators, parents, that is forcing our students down this path of technology? No, I actually don't. I don't think so at all. I think that it has more to do with employers and potentially the professional sphere, the one that we're in, where we're also being pressured to integrate with technology and, oh, let your AI assistant do this and that for you. The AI assistant's only going to disappear in 6 months when they realize that AI is really only really good at math, calculating, and complex, problem solving. That's the stuff that is a fad. That's the transient stuff that I think is going to go away. Right now, when we're in this AI renaissance where we're using it for everything. Oh, well, can it pump me up when I'm not feeling good? Yeah, but that's not a responsible way to use it. Don't tell the computer what's making you sad, right? Don't tell the computer what's making you sad, Fasa, or where you're at, or any of those other things, because yeah, somebody's going to profit off of that, and it's not you.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah. Right now, we have high schoolers graduating, or maybe even in the 10th grade, the 9th grade. I know at Quaker Valley, they're in middle school, and they're thinking about career readiness. That's nothing. Career readiness is nothing. We all have jobs, or are retired. You can get to career without career readiness through the old way of doing things, the no more technology at all way, but we are integrating technology, and so we think that we should be integrating technology into our educational sphere as well. It's not really responsible. We're adults who have already learned a certain number of things about how to deal with this. Children don't have that. We're just casting them into the void that we barely understand, right? I'm losing my train of thought here a little bit, but our education system can't be elementary school, middle school, job junior, job junior in college, and then job. Though it is looking more and more and more like that every day as we see students recording the ways that they're successful, but failing to fail and never learning from mistakes that they make because they're taking the path of least resistance at every opportunity. And so if you never challenge yourself and you never stumble, you'll never really succeed. You've heard that in other places, not just from me. But it's absolutely true, and I think that technology is kind of a scourge in that way because it allows us to take that path of least resistance and even encourages us to turn our brains off and stop thinking in favor of just committing ourselves to making a mistake. We're too scared. All of us, including children, are too scared to make a mistake. And about the consequences of everything in the world. Right?
Lots we could keep saying. Renee, I love the spirit of your question because it was curious and grace-filled. And when I think about public educators in this moment, I just get tired. Like, I can't imagine what you're facing in this moment. You're being asked to bear the weight of the most complex questions in the history of the human experience before breakfast even starts, right? And to fix all of that with, we could go on and on, but Renee, I think you're modeling a kind of humility and community ethic that trends in the direction of solutions to some of these, not solutions, toward answering some of these questions, in a way that is constructive and generative, if I could even use a swear word in the context of this conversation. So let's continue to practice that together. And to celebrate, where we're getting it right. We're almost out of time. I've been kind of taking some notes as we go, and I want to end with a bit of a prophecy and 4 final thoughts, all right? So here's the prophecy of sorts, and it's a bad prophecy because it's been made many other times. But there is a time coming when being atechnological will be a commodity. I had a professor, a mentor in grad school tell me, he was on the board of many admissions committees for med school. And he said, for whatever reason, he called me Danny. Danny, he said, I never want the kid with the best scores. I never want the kid who's done the most programs. I never want the most polished answers. I want folks who can solve problems, who can think artistically, who can think creatively, who can tend with humanity. He said, that makes a good physician. And I think there's going to be a time, there's a growing chasm, I think, between those who are, and this will be one of my points, who are beholden to technology versus those who deploy it as a superpower. And so I just want, I want to create children who know what it means to be human without technology, and then can strap that belt on, right? All right, so that's my sort of lame prophecy. Here's 4 reflections, things I heard tonight that feel to me like the kind of thing I want to take away from this conversation. Number 1, we have to get really clear for ourselves and for our communities, answering the question, what's the same in this moment, and what's unique about this moment in history. Not get tangled up in lamenting the same old problems in a new era, staring intently at those things that are unique in this moment and recognize them for the dangers and opportunities that they present. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm not sure who said this, I think this might have been Anthony. How do we use technology actively rather than becoming a passive consumer of this thing, right? Many times when we were getting to that hopeless place tonight, we were talking about technology doing something to us, worming its way into us, becoming our will, becoming our ethic, becoming our agent of decision-making, locus of authority. How do we prevent ourselves from becoming that kind of a consumer of technology? If we're able to do those things, if we're able to do those things in, with, and among our children, I think we're in a much healthier sort of place. Observation number 2. Number 3, I think is sort of it might be 2B. How do we use technology to augment our humanity, not supplant it? How do we use to augment our humanity, not supplant it? And then 4th, and maybe this is the most radical, or maybe it's the least radical, I'm not sure. How do we build space in our lives, in our stories, in our culture, in our communities, intentionally to divorce ourselves from technology? I was teaching a class at Stetson University a number of years ago, and the class was called Communication and Technology. This was in 2011 or something. We were talking about the pencil, I think, at that time. That was a joke, by the way. And one of the assignments I would give my students every semester was take a fast from technology for 2 hours and then write about your experience. And you would have thought in 2011 that I was asking them to hold their breath for 2 hours, right? And I actually meant to go back and read some of their essays in response, or in preparation for tonight, and I ran out of time. When's the last time any of us have done that? 2 hours. And so, I think disciplining ourselves and celebrating that as a virtue. I go to a church where we fast from food at certain points together as a community. And like we bolster each other and we support each other and we celebrate each other. How could we do that sort of thing around technology and show that to our children and show that to our students? It's a different kind of discipline than doom scrolling on TikTok, I suppose. Anthony, you're itching over there. So
I recommend fishing.
Fishing.
You mentioned it earlier. It is the secret to life. Do get a bass boat. Do spend many hours standing on it. It doesn't matter if it's 12 feet, 16 feet, 20 feet, 22 feet. That is also my secret of how do I want to get away from technology? Grab my twin brother and disappear into the woods.
There you go. Unironically, I guess, or maybe ironically, I don't know, I was trying to take an interview on the boat last week, and I dropped one of my $250 AirPods in the bottom of the Ohio River. So maybe the universe was telling me something. Stop bringing work onto the water. That's right.
Fish finder, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's a whole other conversation. Just to end, this is for Fred maybe. So there's this tremendously fascinating debate going on in the world of BASS, Bass Angler Sportsman Society, about how many side-facing sonar devices are allowed to be on a boat in a bass tournament. Like, that's where we are with this conversation. Like, it's not going anywhere, right? It's not 5, by the way. All right, we have jumped the shark. I'll stop there. Thank you all for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Christine, for making the space for it. I hope we didn't screw it up too badly. It ended on a low point, yeah.
I thought it was a fabulous conversation. Thank you all for making time. You can see why each and every one of you was invited. I just think, I can't think of any other topic where there's so much complexity to it, where people in their own selves don't quite know how they feel. And so I really appreciate you guys coming and talking about it. I think what I'm going to take away from it is just that it's about our community values. I love that you said you have a group of families who you kind of practice your own values with, and I think that's really important. And I think at this time in our lives, as we're raising our kids, whether it's technology or anything else, that we just kind of practice our values together as a family. I like that we started articulating that together tonight. So thank you, Daniel, for moderating. Thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. Thank you to Seth Whitted at Whitted Media for recording this. So the recording will be on Neighborhood North's website, neighborhoodnorth.com, sometime in the future if you'd like to share it. All right, thanks.